Okay, channel is good. Verifying some sound levels. This is the first time we're using Restream for the first time. So I'd be curious to see how this sort of pans out. Let's see, check this. Okay, so it looks like we're good here. I'm actually testing double casting, so it's gonna be actually theoretically, it'll actually be on YouTube. Yeah, so live stream right now too, great. So we're on 2 different channels right now, which is pretty cool. All right, let me just go ahead and tweet this out. That metadata is still out of date. All right, here we go. Okay. What I'll probably do, because usually the thing about the YouTube one is that, let's see. All right, so let's try this out. So we have Ecamm Live. Let's see, comments. All right, so hopefully the comments will come through here. I guess if not, I would check the channel directly. So one of the reasons I always found sort of Twitch a little bit intimidating is there's sort of a lot going on. I see like some of my coworkers like Jason and Cassidy, they're really great at ensuring that, you know, like the chats show up in the window where they're looking, and they're good at following that. And so I'm still trying to figure out how to get all like the things automated, and so it's not quite there yet. But you know, in lieu of moving progress forward, we're gonna try our best to see how this goes. So basically working with the new shotgun mic, camera rig, and hopefully over time we'll get the overlays working. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and dive into Vue 3 and animations. All right. Let's see. Okay. All right, it looks like y'all can't see the overlay. Yep, okay. So now I will switch scenes now. And did that work? No, that didn't work. New scene, here we go. Boom, and all right. So now you should see my screen, and it looks like you can see everything. And yeah, this looks good. So this is a little bit of the zoom effect where I see these controls over my screen, and it looks like I'm just like moving the mouse around randomly, but I assure you it's because I'm moving tools around. And so this is the first time I'm trying out Ecamm, thanks to Debbie's recommendation. And so I've been sort of testing out Streamlabs, and so I'll be sort of playing around with both, and we'll probably let you know what happens when I settle down on one. Okay, but for today, we are here to talk about animations in CSS. And animations are something that are close to my heart and near and dear, as they really help to bring life to the web pages, you know, when it comes to just doing the kind of thing that just, you know, as far as like, let me collect myself real quick. So when we're interacting with things on on websites, especially earlier on when we didn't have the memory and performance to do these things, like a lot of things were just blinking in and out. But as we know with mobile apps and those sort of things, like having that sort of animation, natural feel for things can really help to increase engagement when it comes to our websites and just make it that much more fun to interact with. So that said, for those who have been with Vue for a little while, you might have heard of this article. It was written by Sarah Drasner, so the Intro to Vue.js Animations. And so it's a fantastic article for just sort of getting the overlay of animations within Vue. But the thing is this was last written in September 2019. So this article, I imagine at some point it will probably come out with the Vue 3 version. But in the meantime, we have the awesome docs that she helped put together. And so we're going to go ahead and sort of walk through them together and just sort of see how things are done with Vue compared to how you might do them normally. So to get us started, I'm going to go ahead and fire up VS Code. And let's go ahead and open up my Vue 3 labs. And so we have the JS piece, great there. And then let's go ahead and serve up our local host. In the meantime, let's bump this over and open up port 80. All right. It's got a lot of random stuff in my labs, but that's the whole point of it, right? Is that we get to play around with stuff. Okay, hiding the terminal, and let's go ahead and take a look at what is going on the home page right now, because there is a lot. So we can see here there's a lot of things being looped through. And so for now, we're just gonna wipe all this out. I don't need any of this. These are things, well, I might actually need some of these experiments for later. So let's go ahead and swap this out. Let's see, what other pages do we have to play with? Let's go to About. That'll be good. There you go. This is an About page. Let's play with the About page. Okay, so when it comes to CSS animations, some of the simplest ones we're familiar with are probably things like transitioning background color on things like buttons. So to give a quick example here, right? If we have, yeah, let's just do a button and say, yep. Actually, no, link is probably the proverbial example for this. So we have a link here. Again, let's just have it go to my site, bencodezen.io. And then we're going to go ahead and just bencodezen. And so inside of our style block, you can imagine that if we were just style the anchor link directly, let's say, again, just color blue, text declaration none, for example. Okay, here we go. We have it here. But let's say we inverted this, right? And that we had a background color of white with a color of, do they have like a dark blue? Yeah, dark blue. This is great. All right, so we save that here. You'll see now that this is, you can't tell the difference at all, which makes sense because right now we are already on the white. So let's go ahead and then add the border to px solid dark blue. And so here we can see that here. But what if when we hover over it, for example, we want to switch out the background color? And so typically when we do this, I believe I should probably have Sass installed on this. So I'm going to utilize the preprocessor here. And let's go ahead and on hover, we're going to do background color. This time it'll be dark blue, and then the color will be white, for example, just like that. And so no, I did not install Sass on here. Fine. I'm surprised I did not do that in my labs, but that's something I can fix later on. It's fine. We're not doing anything terribly complicated. We already Sass right now, so we'll bear along with it. So what we have here now is when we hover, you'll notice that there's this blink effect. And so while it might not be immediately obvious, like over time, like this is a little bit jarring. You kind of wish there was that transition. And so how we typically handle this with CSS, for example, is we would say, what do we want to transition? The property. And then we would say, go ahead and say, so the property we want to transition is the background color, for example, and it'll be over a course of 0.8 seconds. And let's just do like an ease in, for example. And so you notice now that it's sort of transitioning over that period of time from one to the other. Now this is a little bit long, as you can see, like even when you fade out. The fade is a little bit long, so usually we might drop it down to like 0.2 seconds. Which sounds really short, but at least it gives, oh, so it looks like the color is blinking in a little bit faster. So I think I can do the same with color 2 seconds ease in. So this is multiple properties. There you go, ease in, ease out, ease in, ease out. So that's like the simplest form we have of CSS sort of animations that most of us have probably encountered during our coding adventures, especially on the front end. But it gets a little bit trickier when it comes to displaying things, right? Like sort of shifting stuff in and out. And so what I mean by that is, let's say, for example, we have two different titles. I'm going to switch between the two names. So here, for example, we'll have either the dragon appear. So let me see if I can get a little dragon emoji up. And then we have unicorn here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to shift it based on whether is dragon is true. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and do the v else down here. And so there we go, we have this. And so let's go ahead and open up the script block. And what we have here is we have our data property that's going to be reactive. And then is dragon is true. All right, so what we see here now is, wow, lots of overlays. I should probably consider a second monitor to handle some of these. We can see that our dragon here is on the top. and it's showing us as you would anticipate. And so what we want here is a button to, let's go ahead and say is dragon equals not is dragon. So we're just going to toggle dragon. And so when we click, it's going to blink in and out. But what if, for example, we wanted it to fade in and out? This is like the tricky part. And so typically what you might try to do is probably like, for example, like without knowing anything else about basically Vue's animation API, I personally might be tempted to do something like, well, I'll do a computed property, right? So let's say we would say computed, and we'll say display dragon. I'll just call it just styles. I'll just be very explicit in this case. So in this case, it'll be basically return. So if dragon is true, then we will go ahead and return is visible. Otherwise, yes. Otherwise, return empty. And then same thing, we'll do the reverse for the unicorn. So if dragon is true, then return nothing. Otherwise, do is visible. And so I might be slightly off with this, but we're going to figure this out. So we would bind this class to display dragon styles. Then we'll bind this one to display unicorn styles. And that's probably how we would initially think of this. And so the reason I'm saying this is, let's just give this a class of dragon and a class of unicorn. Okay. So is dragon is not defined. Yes, I forgot. We are in options API at the moment, so we need this. Great. Everything is good. And so the reason I'm saying this is because, okay, so dragon dot, by default, we would say that, let's say opacity is 1. We want our dragon by default to be 1. And then we would say something like, if dragon is, oh, I got it, hold up, I flipped it. If it's visible, then opacity is 1. Otherwise, opacity is 0. And so similarly, actually, the unicorn is the exact same way. So both unicorn and dragon, technically, although, again, we could theoretically refactor this into one mystical animal class, probably. We are going to say, let me see, this is, bump this up. We are going to then do here, dot unicorn is visible, and just like that. And so when we switch between the two, we'll see that right now it's still basically toggling in and out. Oh wait, sorry, I need to do a transition on opacity before we can say that this experiment has concluded. Great. And so you'll see now that it's still blinking in and out, even though like you're thinking like, okay, I have this opacity, I want to transition on it. So every time it toggles this CSS class, theoretically it should go ahead and switch it out. And part of the reason this is happening is mostly because, frankly, the VIF is actually destroying the element. So if I were to guess and switch this out, for example, let me save this now, you'll see now that we actually get the opacity effect that we're looking for. But this is not what we want, right? We don't want both of them taking up the slot and saying like, oh, okay, like basically we have two H1s on the page. And frankly, this is not accessible at all either, because when we look at it, we have basically two H1s on the page that are simply hidden through visibility rather than what we actually want, which is that VIF scenario. So knowing that now, we basically want to introduce the transition component, which Vue basically provides for us in order to help aid with these situations. And so for those of us, I think, you know, if you've been watching my streams, you're probably familiar with a dynamic component piece I think we've reviewed recently, which is a built-in component provided by Vue that allows you basically dynamically swap out components based on certain conditions. So similarly, then there is a native Vue element that we use called transition, which helps us with this very thing. And so we'll see here in the docs, right? Let's just do a quick review. It's basically like when we want to have something enter or leave, right? Similar to what we were seeing earlier. We want to come in, come out. Then this is where the transition wrapper really does come in. And so we'll see here inside of this example, right? Similar to what we have the toggle button, which we have right here. Let me bring this up a little bit more. Yeah. Okay. And then once we have this, then the other thing is that we need to wrap the thing that we actually want to change in and out with the actual transition. And so in this case, let's go ahead and follow the docs on this. So we have a transition, and we'll learn about the name attribute in a second. But basically here are the two things we're trying to transition here. And so while I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and delete these computed properties, which we were using in an attempt to actually like do the thing that we're about to do. So here, say save. Great. Okay, so what is this name fade business? That's probably one of the things you're thinking about. And so if we see down here inside of this example, we'll see actually this code look very, very familiar, which is that we have something that allows us to transition what we're paying attention to, in this case, which is the opacity. And then we have like the time duration and the Bezier curve. And then we have the thing that we're starting from. And so the key thing, though, the difference here is that notice that this fade here is what matches the name fade here. Because when we give a transition a name, we're basically saying we're going to have these CSS classes that are going to prepend like in a convention so that you can then define them accordingly. So in this case, you'll see here that when we enter active, right, when the active item enters, what do we want to do? We want to transition the opacity and like ease it in. And then when it leaves, same deal, ease it out. Vice versa, when you're entering from, like where are you starting from, then you're starting from 0, and then you're leaving to 0. So again, just sort of that 1 to 0 concept. So if we go ahead and implement this now, so I'm going to go ahead and delete this. Let's go ahead again, let's practice. So we have fade. And we have two states. We have enter active, right? The active item that's entering. And then we fade, and whenever the fade leave active here. And so we define the transition here, opacity half a second, we'll do ease. And then on the flip side, where are they coming from? Where are they leaving to? So enter from what? And then I just realized I forgot the other one here. So let me, whoop. Scroll too much. Oh man, this is hard with the large fade. Okay, here we go. Then here I needed to then add another class for fade leave to, because once an item transitions out, then they're gonna go ahead and go this way. Okay. So we've replicated now the code here. I know we could have copy and pasted, but you know, when it comes to doing, like, whenever you're following tutorials, one of the things I always highly recommend is like just take the time to type it out, even doc stuff. I know that a lot of times when we're trying things out for the first time, it's easy to copy and paste. I find the muscle memory really does help to sort of engage sort of your brain on a level that's sort of like trying to recognize and like basically make those patterns more concrete. And so in here now we'll see, let's go back to our Vue 3 demo. Okay, yep. What's going on? Expect to see one element or component. All right, so this is the first bug we're running into. So let's go ahead for now, and let's go ahead and cut out our unicorn, and let's see what happens. So here, let's go ahead and refresh again. And so if we toggle the dragon here, it is, oh, I don't have a V. Oh, right. That's, hold up, V if. I was gonna say, I was like, I'm pretty sure this is right. Okay, so this should be fine now. Okay, great. Okay, so now this is a little bit better. So what we saw earlier, to be totally clear, is that when we did not have the v-else, v-if condition, basically Vue breaks. And that's understandable because it basically doesn't know which element you're supposed to track. And not only is it which, the transition is supposed to focus on one specific element in that regard. And so that's why, like in this case, we had taken it off because I was trying to demonstrate what we've done with the computer property. And so this is why we need to put the v-if else back, because now we actually have the one element that's shifting. The one thing we noticed though is that, so we see that the unicorn is disappearing, but then it's doing that thing where it's like blinking in and out. And so let's go ahead and see if the docs helps to address it in this regard. Leave to enter 2. Yep. Show slip fade, slate active. And so here, let's go ahead and make this real quick. Result, toggle, slide, enter active. Okay, I realize I need to try to see if the eCam Live is showing any comments inside of here. Nothing here. Okay, let me just check real quick the Twitch channel here. And I don't think, okay, channel room is quiet. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. I don't think. Hey Jonathan, just saw your comment on YouTube. Yeah, sorry, still trying to figure out the live streaming, all the software business. So appreciate the words of support. Okay, so the interesting thing here is I remember at one point there was, you know what though, I'm curious. Sarah's article might have something on this because I believe this is something that actually happens fairly common because we're getting that weird blink effect, which is just, I'm trying to remember how she dealt with this. So let's see. This is a learning experience. We're on a journey together. So vif, vshow, yup. So trigger modal. Okay, so this is a modal example she's showing here. So we just learned about the fade, which we, again, borrowing from, not even borrowing, this is very similar in concept to what is in Vue 2. So nothing we're learning here is different in this regard. So everything is good. This is very consistent. So here we can see now the modal is actually like opacity in out, which is what we want, which is good. Fade in, and then the background lost focus. Yep. So here, blur, lost focus. Okay, so she used a computer class to blur the background. Okay, yep, that makes sense. And then, yeah, this is what's tripping me up a little bit, is that we don't want it to blink in position. We want it to actually stay put. So basically, we'd almost want it to fade in and out immediately, but I wonder if my first instinct, so okay, if I had to, like, if this was a hotfix, sometimes I think that's a good way to sometimes jog our, call it our motivation, is when we get caught up in like how the perfect thing might work, basically I like to treat it like a hotfix. So there's a bug right now on production, this is what's showing up. How do we fix said thing? Well, in order to fix said thing, I think what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead, my first instinct is that both of these, so I'm going to call this now mystical animal. That's what we're going to do. These are both mystical creatures. Again, just for, actually for, we're going to call them creatures for now. And then creatures should, yeah, this feels a little hacky, but I'm not going to think too hard about it because our goal here is to just see if we can get it to work. So using just HTML and CSS, here we have it here. So I'm going to call this creature. It's a wrapper, but it's technically a cage. So we're talking about the creature cage. The creature cage is position relative because this is the bounds in which the creature lives. But the creature itself, and it is not plural, so I'm just going to change that, is position absolute. Oh, this feels so gross. All right, I'm just going to do float left real quick. Let's just see what happens. Yeah, it's still blinking in and out. Not good. Okay, yep, gonna keep hacking this. Position absolute left 0. Okay, so interesting. Why is my, I half expected the box to stack. Why is my box not stacking? It's because it has no height. What? creature cage has no height. Yet the child does. Is this because of some weird... All right, let's find out. Oh, okay. So that worked. Which, you know, now that I'm thinking about it, it's certainly not weird as far as the original implementation, because without this position piece, what we find here, so if I go ahead and uncomment this. Okay, so if we imagine how the browser works, right? The browser is focused on making sure there's a spot for the set elements. And so when we toggle it, what we're doing is while one is fading out, the other one is fading in. And so the way I had basically hacked around that is to like force them to stay, like basically sit on top of each other so that you get that like one is coming in, one is coming out. But I would say that, granted, this is probably a question I just need to ask Sarah. There probably is a way to basically, because it's almost like what we kind of want to do is just basically like once one fades out, the other one starts fading in, so you don't have that like weird position swap where the browser has already allocated two areas on the page for said animation. So, tis interesting. Okay, so at least the bare minimum, we found a way to animate the we found a way to animate our titles in a way that allows us to sort of toggle the position. Now, granted, a little bit hacky given that I've used some positioning within CSS to sort of get the effect. But at the end of the day, if we were to shift, like if this were a production bug, granted it's not centered, so let's not worry about that right now. But it does, heck, what if I just went like display margin 0 auto, go, and nothing's happening. Sadness. I'm not gonna make this a CSS. Womp 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 womp. Why? Why does it? Oh, I know why. So the reason why this is not working. Well, sorry. The reason why the div has a height of 0 is because when you absolute position something, it's no longer like while the title is a child, like this h1 is a child of the creature cage, right? Like HTML wise, we've removed it from basically the parent context. So the parent basically has no idea what the child is. Like we could make the child like 500 pixels. The parent basically has no idea because it's now basically doing, it's free. It's free from its cage is another way of thinking of it. It's really late, so pardon my analogies at this point. But so for now, I say, like, again, if I were really focused on making this work, we know based on the calculations here, it is 44 pixels, so that's fine. We have a basic height here, although I don't think that's computed correctly because I think it's literally only doing, no, I am right. So total 470 or whatever, 471. Let's just round up like that. What just happened? That should work. What did I do? I did something. I broke something. Console. And computed 44. Why does it say 4 or 5? Oh, that's the window. Silly me. Okay, 44, 22, 22. It is 42, 42, 42, 86. Womp, 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 womp. Okay, much better. So now that we have this, okay, so why is it not center? The reason it is not center is because we have positioned it all the way to the left. I don't even know why I even thought of that. Like, that is my fault. I did that. This is not even a weird browser thing. And so your initial instinct might be basically to go 50%, right? And this looks like it works, but not quite. And I realized, gosh, my head is covering the code again. My apologies. You know what? I'm gonna try to switch this up a bit because I can cover the browser tools a bit, but covering the code, that's yeah, new software always takes a little getting used to. So okay, so what we have here is we went left. So again, if you're new to CSS, you're probably thinking that the left 50% is looking kind of off. And the reason why it's not is because it's done exactly what you've told it to. It has moved your element 50% clear across the screen, but starting from the left-hand side of the element. And you're thinking like, I want it to be center. And so if you want that to happen, this is a great trick that I was reminded of recently, which is you combine it with the transform CSS property, and you just translate it across the x-axis. And so when you use the transform property and you're translating it, it actually translates relative to the item itself. It is not actually translating to the entirety of the page. And so when I do minus 50%, because I wanted to go backwards, but I only wanted to go backwards for half of the element's worth, this is how you basically call it fake basically the center, like justify content center that you might normally use in Flex, for example. And so now that we have our creature properly centered in the center, tongue twisters all day. All right, you'll see now that we actually have the effect that we want. We have it animating in, animating out, and the dragon is toggling. So this is pretty cool. Let's go ahead and commit that for anyone who wants to play with that. So gosh, what did I do? This is why I should commit between experiments, because now I have a bunch of junk. All right, here we go. So feature add mystical creature transition. Boom. Okay, in the meantime, I'm just, they're just experiments. I'm just gonna miscellaneous commit because I have no idea really. I forgot what I did there. Okay. So there's one more thing I want to take a look at for this stream sesh, is to talk about animation, because for those of us who are newer to the realm of transition animation with CSS, they're two completely different things. Like we tend to think of animation as just anything that takes a starting state into an ending state, but in CSS they do mean two different things. So basically, again, transition is, call it like I don't know if this analogy would make the most sense. So it's sort of the simpler form of animation in the sense that it has a starting point and then an ending point, and that's really all it is. And only certain properties can actually be transitioned between on top of that. So in that regard, transition is more limited and has, it's just more limited. But again, it's super easy to use, and I think that's why so many of us are familiar with things like I showed at the beginning of the stream, which are being able to transition like your background color when you're hovering over buttons. Like most of us are fairly comfortable with that. On the other hand, animation often scares many of us because it sounds very complicated, and there's a lot going on. So let's just take a quick look at how animations work before we dive into the Vue aspect of it. Okay, so here, face is on the lower right, we good. Let's do this. So here we have our dragon. So let's say, for example, we wanted, this next animation is inspired from Cassidy's recent, she hosted the javascript.com birthday before, and so I was helping her with a jiggle animation where if you hover over something, let's just have it like basically like kind of grow, shrink. And so you're probably thinking like, oh, I need a library for this. But I think one of the things I think a lot of us front-end developers would be more effective at our job at, tongue twisting all day long. What I'm trying to say is, one of the ways I think we could be more effective at what we do is realizing that while JavaScript is really powerful at doing a lot of things, CSS is basically like things that are built in and are ready, like they're optimized for performance. Whereas like with JavaScript, while we can get in and fiddle with a lot of different things, you often end up with things that might not necessarily be performant, and there are lots of little gotchas, and you have to really understand the spec for it to work. Whereas CSS is already optimized for you, so why not learn how that works? So let's do it. So let's say, for example, when we hover over our title, we want it to expand. Let's do it as simple as that. So we have our creature here. And so for our creature, what we might want to do, for example, is say when the creature is hovered, we're going to go ahead and transform it and say scale, I'm just going to do 2. Okay, so now if you hover over it, refresh. Oh no, I broke it. How did I break? Oh, I know why I broke it. I did not, I killed the local server. All right, refresh. And then, oh, it's not, I missed something. Transform scale. I think I used it correctly, but I could be wrong. Div scale. Yep, transform scale, that is correct. Oh, I cannot spell. Ha! All right, now the positioning is off. Okay, one problem at a time. Okay, so we see that it's blinking, right? And so when we hover over, it's like raw. It's like instantly like in your face, and we don't like that. We want it to grow. Is what we want to do. And so you might be tempted originally to go, well, I know this. Let's transition our transform, and we'll do it over the course of half a second, and we'll ease it. We'll just ease it. All right. So now. And then you hover over. Oh, look at that. It like in and out. And you're like, okay, like you're probably feeling pretty good about yourself. And this is what I'm saying. This is where transition is actually really easy to use, because without knowing too much beyond like the property you want, the time, and the Bezier curve, you basically have some basic animation. But what happens now? I want the jiggle effect. And so the jiggle effect means that we're going to go up and then back down and then back up and then back down. And you can like, we could fake it right now with like this like jump in and out hover, but like, let's face it, that's not what you want the user to do. You want it to be like when it hovers, just to do the thing you want. And that's where animations come in, because now we need to start defining, call it the story of what's going to happen. And so the way we're going to do this is we're going to say, all right, so the way you define animation start is we use the keyframes. Actually, I'm going to call it a, okay, I'm going to have to look this up now. Because of JavaScript, I'm inclined to call it a decorator, but I don't know if that's actually right. It looks like it might be called a rule. Because it's funny, growing up, this might be a rule. The @ symbol, if someone knows this, feel free to comment, let me know. Anyways, I'm going to call it a rule for now. It looks like it says the keyframes rule. All right, anyhow. So what this does is basically think of it like we're declaring the const, the variable. This is us telling it not just we're doing another thing, we're defining a keyframe. And so the keyframe we're going to do, I'm going to call it jiggle. And so inside of our keyframe, we can basically define stages. And so in its simplest state, we can basically say where it goes from and where it goes to. Like this is the simplest state we have with animations. And so, for example, we can say we want to transform, and we want to start the scale at 1, meaning we're not changing it at all. This is like the original thing. And then we're going to transform the scale to 2. So if you think of it this way, it's more like defining the start and end points. And in this regard, this is why I'd love to have more people be familiar with CSS animations, because it's in this regard, it's actually a bit like JavaScript in this regard, because you're actually being very explicit about what you're expecting in between. And as far as I'm concerned, like the keyframes is an API that allows you to be very explicit with how you want it to happen, and then it just does what you want. And so there's less magic in that regard. And so here, if we now want to apply that to our hover state, we simply would apply the animation property. And then we'll do jiggle, and we'll do it over the course of, again, 0.5 seconds. And I believe that's it, actually. I don't think I need to do anything else. So here, you'll see now that it does a little something. It like, well, I think it's like repositioning, but we'll actually, let's not do the positioning right now, because that would be kind of annoying. Okay. There you go. This is better for our demonstration purposes. So you see now that when I hover it, it actually goes all the way to the top and then it ends. And so animations also have I think it was like reverse. There's an animation direction piece. And so one of the things that's not so nice about this that you might be thinking is that, oh, it like goes to the top and then it doesn't like stay there. And so one of the things you could do, for example, is with the animation direction is you can tell it to where it ends. And so you want it to forwards, then backwards, alternate reverse. No. So when I'm talking about this, for example, if it was alternate, you'll see here that if I define a separate thing of the alternate, you'll see that, that's not what I was expecting. CSS, although what am I doing on MDN? CSS animation, reverse. All right, hold on, let me skip something real quick. Animation fill mode, is this what I'm looking for? Start to finish. Yep. Okay, that's what I want. All right. So animation fill mode, again, just in the API, is the idea that like where it's going to end. And so here, if we hover over this now, you'll see that it actually stops. And so now that we have this sort of working, and then we'll see it'll blink black, blink back. We'll see now though, we want it to go backwards. And so how would I do this? Well, if I'm not mistaken, we can take the animation jiggle effect and then we could actually, this is where the reverse comes in, I believe. So CSS animation reverse. And I don't want that, I want MDN. So the animation direction sets whether it goes forward, backwards, and whatnot. And so this is where we should, so you'll see that if it's reversed, it starts from here and then backwards. And so, oh, this might not actually work the way I want it to, but that's okay. We'll figure it out real quick. So reverse. And so here, yeah, it just starts that way. That's weird, the blinking. Okay, sorry, I'm getting a little distracted. So the reason this is interesting is because we're not gonna worry about the blink back for now. Is because what we can do now with this is we can then define the CSS animation to be more interesting. So the from and to is basically the equivalent of saying 0% to 100%. And so if I save this and refresh, you'll see now this still works. But now what we're gonna do is we can, now you see the numeric percentages, we can go in between. And so for example, let's say that at 50%, this is where I want it to be its greatest. And then at the end, I still want it to return back to 0 because it's a jiggle effect. So it's not supposed to go back. So, and then I'm gonna say at 25%, I'm gonna scale it to 2.5. So I'm gonna have it go past a little bit and then come back down a little bit. And then actually I'm gonna have it come down to 1.5 and then at 75% we transform and scale it up to 2 and then all the way back down to 1. Okay, so now we have this sort of step-by-step sequence of what we expect. And so you see now that boom, 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 it jiggles. Although the jiggle would probably go left and right. So this is more of a, I don't know, it's like in your face. Boom, boom, boom. I'm also running out of sounds for tonight. So this is cool. But the question is, we're using right now like things like CSS to trigger it. But what happens when we want to we need to do things in a more programmatic way? And so that's sort of what I want to sort of wrap up on and end on, is this idea of using CSS animations to be triggered when it enters. And so this is tricky now because based on what we know right now, you might be tempted to wrap it in, again, the transition element that we talked about here. Except, again, we, as I tried to stress earlier, transitions and animations are different things. They're basically handled via different APIs. And so you'll see now that with animations, there's an animation end, and basically there are different things we have to deal with. So what we end up doing is, oh, I misspoke a little bit. The difference, there is a difference. What is the difference? I see the transition to and from is not, okay, sorry. It has to do with, it's less about having a different element and more about just understanding the difference that when there's an animation end event. And so here now, it looks like if we take a look at our, so we have our jiggle animation here, and then we want to actually, instead of using transition, we actually use our animation jiggle 0.5 seconds. Bounce, yep, bounce end, bounce act, enter, active, bounce leave, active. So yeah, you'll see that this is now a little bit different from what we expect. Because what we have here now is when we did this before, you can see that the leave and the active were the same transition, sort of back and forth. However, you'll see here that the active state here versus the leave active state here, they now have to have, basically call it 2 halves of the animation. So that's actually what I was sort of getting to, and it took me a little while to connect the dots, is that we saw the, so when we, actually, let's simplify this back down. I can leave this. I'm going to delete, actually I'll leave the forwards here. I'll delete this. And again, let's simplify our animation again back down to 1 and 2. And I think that should be good enough. So to demonstrate what I'm talking about, once again, just for context sake, whoa, that's not what I wanted, is that here, when you hover over, it goes out really big. And then when you leave, it just blinks out. And that's the problem with the animation, is that you've only defined one direction. And so that's why inside the docs here, when we're looking at it, there are 2 different parts. And so here, let's just go ahead and show this. So currently I'm calling it fade. It really should probably be named jiggle, but let's just screw it. We're gonna be consistent so we don't get confused. So jiggle enter active is what we really, is how this, the first animation sequence is gonna happen. On the other hand, jiggle leave active is going to do the same jiggle effect, but it'll do it in reverse. And so that said, I think 1, 2, there. I think just like that. So if this works as expected, oh, that blinks so fast. I'm just gonna do something long, like 5 seconds. And then we're gonna go ahead and ignore the unicorn for now, because I think that's part of what's making it weird. Nope. Oh, I renamed the animation to jiggle. Okay, oh sorry, the transition name here. Boom, 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 and then it's slowly going back, down, and then it's gone. Going all the way up. And then, oh my god, this is so long. Oh, this was a mistake. Okay, 1 second. You think it's not a long time when you define the 5 seconds, and then it's miserable. So there you go, blink out. And so actually what you would really want is probably, actually you would want it to go from 0 to like 2, for example. So we refresh, boop, and boop. That's what you got. So that's what, so when you're playing with keyframe animations, just remember that your transitions no longer take care of both the, basically the in and out, and you have to be explicit in how it comes in and how it comes out. And so granted, I think there's some more things we could toggle with that little title, but yeah, so I think that wraps up today as far as our session on playing with CSS animations and how it plays in with sort of the Vue piece of it. Since Vue does sort of control how elements, especially with things like VIF, where the element is straight up being destroyed and then recreated, that is the time where really it actually is important to sort of get a deeper understanding of why we're doing things a certain way and not just doing it through like computed properties, which we had done earlier in the stream. So with that, really appreciate everyone for those of you who joined tonight. If you're watching the recording, I'll make sure this is up on YouTube later. So again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next, I'll see you around. All right, good night.